Good evening, everyone. My name is Jessica Mitchell, and I'm a student here at LeTourneau University. I was able to take the Police and Community course that was offered through LeTourneau. In this presentation and slideshow, I'm going to give a brief summary of a research article that I decided to spend some time on. I chose police militarization, and I will be talking about the advantages, disadvantages, and necessity of police militarization. So first, I'll start by defining it. Criminal justice professor and successful writer Peter Kraska defines police militarization as, quote, the process whereby civilian police increasingly draw from and pattern themselves around the tenets of militarism and the military model, end quote. To give you a little backstory, I chose this topic because as someone who thoroughly enjoys law enforcement and spends a good deal of time with them, I've noticed a change in the media footage of officers who used to only carry around one gun and a nightstick to now keeping 3 extra rounds on their belts, semi-automatic weapons in their vehicles, shields with tasers on them, and uses military-grade force. When we think of militarized officers, we tend to think mostly of the Special Weapons and Tactics Team, or SWAT. But if you look more closely, your local patrol officer has the same equipment on his duty belt as a SWAT officer. And I was struck with the question as to why. Why do officers and agencies feel the need to increase such equipments and tactics? So first, let's look at what equipment they use. In Charles Koch's article on the militarization of police, he mentions the billions of dollars that are being used to buy armored vehicles, aircraft, bayonets, grenade launchers, night vision goggles, and machine guns. The shocking thing is, local law enforcement carries this on a daily basis. It's normal to see the FBI and SWAT teams carry this around, but it's a bit shocking to see a beat officer also carrying one. As keepers of the peace, law enforcement agencies are not going to just increase their tactical training and equipment for no reason, which moves me to my first point, the advantages of this style of policing. Unfortunately, we live in a sin-filled world, which means crimes, murders, theft, and arson happen every day. People want better protection. They want a force that can stop criminals before the crime actually happens. They want someone who can use night vision goggles, snipers who can aim really well, and armored vehicles to avert the criminals, to keep them protected. People complain about there not being enough security around, and will say things like, well, if we had better cameras here, then this wouldn't have happened. Or, if the officers had gotten there quicker, so-and-so wouldn't have died. Studies show that when canines and drones are brought into the picture to stop the said bad guy, it sparks a bit of satisfaction with the people watching from home. Why? Because they're safe on their couches, and they're thankful for the extensive training the officers had, knowing to throw a flashbang grenade into a room to distract the offender and rescue the child, or to protect a local grocery store from being robbed with the use of night vision goggles. Because we live in such a high-stress world, the feeling of peace and safety is very appealing to the average American. Not only does this make people feel safer, it satisfies their need for better protection. Education also plays a huge role in the advantages of police militarization. When people see how protected they are, they get to see how the officers do their work. But not everybody sees officers in such a positive light, which brings me to my next point, the disadvantages of police militarization. Yes, the militarization and militarized equipment and training has saved people, but it has also hurt innocent people. The Denver News shared a story that said a SWAT team destroyed a Greenwood Village family's home. Now, a federal appeals court says police don't have to pay for the damage, and blared that across the headline. There are several other stories of SWAT teams running into houses that were not the right ones. But one of the most heated debates of the decade was the Michael Brown case. A writer writes in one of his research articles, as thousands of marched in the Ferguson, Missouri to protest the police shooting of Michael Brown in 2014, many Americans were surprised and alarmed by the character of the law enforcement's response. For days, national news networks broadcast images of armored vehicles, snipers taking aim at unarmed black and brown citizens, and officers clad in battle armor, deployed by the state and local agencies. And that is what seemed to spark it all. Not everyone feels safe in their living room couch watching the armored vehicles, flashbangs, shields, and machine guns going across their screen. Police militarization is beginning to make citizens fearful. The police should not be feared in an unhealthy manner, but the increased military-styled way of everyday life is giving news anchors and headlines all the freedom in the world to get their audience more engaged. So what do we have? Half the population is pleased with the safety and threat deterrent style of policing, while the other half is frustrated and rightfully fearful of such equipment. So why do we have law enforcement in the first place? Well, it's because everything is unpredictable. The Boston Marathon, nobody saw it coming. 9/11, nobody saw it coming. In fact, it wasn't until 9/11 when two hijacked planes crashed into the World Trade Center, killing hundreds of innocent people, that America realized the colossal size of its enemies. The world was in a chaotic crisis the following weeks, wishing and begging that they had better protection. And that is why it is a necessity. Terrorists come from all over and all shapes and sizes, as do their attacks. When armored vehicles drive down the streets instead of patrol cars, yes, it makes the citizens weary, but it also averts the criminal. Criminals have a much harder time fighting back something that is organized like the military. It is a much higher risk, and it makes them stop and contemplate if robbing, kidnapping, or hacking is worth their time, lives, and equipment. It also prevents high-risk attacks from happening. If we had the advanced aircraft or simply specially trained officers, better communication devices, and the presence of an advanced weapon on one of those planes that hit the Twin Towers, the possibility of those people still being alive today would be very high. One of the most powerful things my mom ever said to me was, "It's better to have and not need than need and not have." In other words, it's better to have this equipment accessible and not need it than need it and not have it accessible. Unfortunately, we live in a world now where everything is unpredictable. Even the weatherman doesn't even know what's coming half the time. This nation is so swallowed up by fear and faith in the protection of man-made laws and equipment, we forget to look at the real protector, the one who says in Isaiah 41:10, "So do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand." In conclusion, police militarization is not a bad thing. It is a really good thing. It has many advantages and disadvantages, but it is necessary to keep the community safe from the future of high-risk attacks. Yes, there are incidents that don't go well when militarization is used on a day-to-day basis. But for the most part, Officers do their best to utilize their training and equipment in the ways that they have been trained in order to prevent innocent people from getting hurt. Nobody's perfect, except for God. And it's sad to see that people expect officers to be perfect in their decision making. Thank you for watching.